Hi, everybody. I'm Mike Smith for Litter Media Live on Facebook. Today, our special guest is Katie Uhl, Executive Director of South Central Ohio Chapter of the American Red Cross. Katie covers a number of different counties in our coverage area, and we're going to be talking about things like blood drives and ways to volunteer for disaster services that's run by the Red Cross. Our interview today brought to you by Hometown Motors Incorporated. Back with Katie Uhl after this.
It's time to get serious about your lawn. It's time to step up to the best mower brand money can buy. For nearly 4 decades, Skag has been the easy choice for lawn care professionals. Don't settle for anything less than simply the best when it comes to mowing your lawn. There's sure to be a Skag model that's perfect for your yard, big or small. Make your lawn the envy of the neighborhood. Visit your local Skag dealer today. Skag, simply the best.
Back with Katie Uhl. Now, for those of you in Greenfield who have the same spelling of U-H-L, they say Uhl, you say Uhl.
We say Uhl. I don't know. There's so many of us, though, like all over, spread out all over Ohio. And I've noticed, like, I've traveled to Michigan, and the hotel clerk in Michigan was like, oh, where from Ohio are you from? Like, he knew. Right. And I'm like, how?
Yeah, exactly.
He goes, well, I married one of your people. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, very good. Oh, Katie, we have been assigned to you, I guess, here. It's not too many months back. What all of the counties that you represent currently?
Okay, so I have Fairfield, Ross, Pickaway, Hocking, Fayette, Clinton, Vinton, Adams, Athens, Highland. I think that's all of them.
Yeah. Now, the counties, we've been following, doing things with Red Cross blood drives and things of that nature for many, many years. And this, I believe, is a recent change of coverage area.
Yeah, so I think in 2019, this predates me by a few years in my role, but in 2019, towards the end of the year, right before the pandemic hit, we actually, the American Red Cross restructured a little bit into these chapter that were a little bit bigger than what we'd normally seen before. Usually it was like one executive director per county in a lot of areas, and so they decided that this chapter structure might give more support. Because then we go from a chapter to a region to a division to national. And it's sort of just this built out support structure that makes sure that we're able to deliver our mission everywhere.
Now, is your office based in Lancaster?
So I have 3 offices. I have one based here in Chillicothe on Bridge Street. I have one in Lancaster on Memorial Drive, and I have one in Athens on May Avenue.
Okay, and then covering those other counties. Now, Pike County, which is just to our south, are they based out of West Virginia now? Or?
So, yeah, I think that their executive director would be in West Virginia, yes.
Yeah. Okay. We wanted to start out talking about blood drives, which we've become very familiar with. Dan Ramey and I used to do Dan and Mike's blood drive for many years when we were on the radio, the terrestrial radio, and that was a real fun event. Mary McCord, who just retired. I'm sure you're familiar with Mary. What are some of the things when you set up a blood drive as to who hosts it, things of that? What goes into those decisions?
Yeah, sure. So usually for a blood drive, if you're interested in what we call sponsoring a blood drive, you're just going to need basically to fill out an interest form. So if you can get say 30 names on an interest form, it doesn't mean that they're going to actually, all those people are going to end up donating on the day. It just means, I've got 30 people who say, I would give blood, sure. And then you have the space to do it. That's pretty much what entails whether or not we're able to set one up. And then we work on a date and time with that, with the sponsor, and get that set up and for a day and time that works for them and their space and our collection staff. So that's kind of how that works. And it's actually really simple, especially for employers. If you get 30 staff members who say, sure, I'll give blood. Even if it doesn't end up working out for them on that particular day, that's okay. It doesn't affect you in that way. But the more people we can get to sign up initially, the better. Yeah.
Blood donors themselves, has there been any changes in the last couple of years as to who can and can't donate blood now?
I'm not sure about in the last couple of years, other than we have changed how we screen donors. So we've gone to what's called an individual donor assessment. So it makes it a little easier for certain communities to give than it was before, because it's not based off of necessarily sexual orientation or anything like that, as it had been in the past. That was an FDA rule. The FDA came down and changed that rule, and we were able to then change our policies to screen in a different way so that it's really based on that individual person and their history, and then be able to determine if they're eligible to give or not.
I know for many years I had donated blood at our radio blood drives, and then there was a medication that I was taking that they said, oh no, you can't donate. And I believe that's changed again where I can. So
okay, yeah. So the research is always developing, always changing. How we process the product, the blood product, is always developing and changing to fit the need, right? And we're always trying to innovate at the Red Cross to make sure that as many people are eligible to give as possible. So that's why that might have changed. They might have said, oh, hold on, there's a little red flag with this particular medication for this reason. Let's look into that. Then if they innovated a solution in the processing, there you go.
So if someone was turned away because of a medication or a condition, how do they stay up with maybe that's changed in years to come?
Yeah, if you go to redcrossblood.org, there usually is the whole list of what we would call deferments, reasons that you would get deferred. And so you can check and see if your particular medication is on there. And then that they do change. So look, I've had people tell me, oh, I traveled to a certain place at in a certain year. Is that still a deferment? Because it depended, like there was a lot of mad cow and things like that were deferments. So some of those things drop off eventually, depending on how long it's been or innovations that we've done to make sure that we can screen for all of those things and make sure the blood is safe. So yeah, there's absolutely ways for people to potentially get back onto that donor rotation. Generally the things that are still going to exclude you are going to be usually some kind of heart medication, blood thinners, things like that. Those are kind of like they just are what they are.
Yeah. I know with as we have seen this in the past, as we do this interview live in late March, we're coming up on that time of season where it seems like your need is greater because more people are traveling, there's accidents, and people need blood.
Absolutely, yeah. More traveling, so that creates more accidents, more disasters. So in the summertime, when we start getting, hurricanes, things like that, we end up. That impacts the blood supply. People don't realize, like the Red Cross, they're like, oh, there's like two separate parts to it. No, it all really affects each other, because if we have a disaster in an area where we were supposed to have a bunch of blood drives, we just lost a bunch of blood, plus the blood now needed for potential victims in a situation. So it all flows together. And yes, it's also just a matter of they're in the summer, right? And so they're traveling, they're not hitting their normal appointment time because they're on vacation. Kids are out of school. A lot of our donors are at high schools, right? We do drives at high schools. And so we don't have that for that span of time. So the more that we can get that built back up in the summertime and get people to sign up to donate, the better.
You spoke about disasters. So we'll dovetail from blood drives to volunteers.
Sure.
I know when the tornado hit in west central Ohio here a couple of weeks ago, there were, I think, EMA in some of those counties were saying we don't need any extra help right now. However, people that wanted to help, Red Cross is a great way to do so.
Yes, absolutely. So basically what we just ask is that the reason the EMA say that is they don't want people to self-deploy and just kind of show up, because then that makes it chaotic. But what you can do is go to redcross.org and sign up to volunteer there, and then we can process you and get you into, potentially you could still go help, right? We do have volunteers on the ground in those situations still, even from our area who went further north to help out, of course, because that's how we're structured, right? We have, if there's a major need somewhere else, we'll help provide people to do that while also making sure that we're taking care of at home. But Ohio actually tends to deploy out a lot to like the more national disasters, because we don't usually see things like what we saw in the last couple of weeks with the mass devastation of those tornadoes. Thankfully, hopefully we don't see it again anytime soon. So, but yeah, the need for volunteers, even in our area, is great, because when that happens, that puts a strain on our workforce here, we also had several home fires, right? So if your neighbor has a fire, we need to have the volunteers to respond to that, while some of our volunteers also go help those that were impacted by disaster somewhere else.
If someone wanted to volunteer for Red Cross Disaster Services, what kind of training is involved?
So we provide all of the training in-house. You don't need to have any kind of experience ahead. Everybody brings their own skills and life experience to their volunteer experience at the Red Cross. But what we do is, you sign up, and then there's a certain amount of usually virtual online classes that you take just to have an idea of what to expect in a disaster and what your role would be depending on what you've been signed up to do. And then you go from there. And then of course there's the on-the-job training, because every disaster is different. So yes, we train you, but be adaptable is one of our favorite quotes at the Red Cross, because it's you may show up to a disaster and maybe the job that you were trained to do, they have to pivot, how they would normally do it depending on the disaster. So just being aware of that. But if you're an adaptable person who wants to help, it's not a hard thing to do. It's
right.
Just really showing up and showing compassion for people.
I know with a lot of different organizations that help in time of disaster, people have given clothing, non-perishable food items, but probably over the last 20 years, I know with Red Cross and other organizations, they said, if the best thing you could do is to donate money, because what you need to help those folks.
Yeah.
And that's something that can be turned around in a hurry.
Right. Yeah. And in-kind donations are great in certain situations. And there are organizations that we partner with on the ground. A lot of times at a disaster, say maybe you have Salvation Army, and they will take those in-kind donations to then go back out to the victims that have been affected. But the reason we don't do it is we don't really have throughout the year, we don't have anywhere to store those things. It just becomes kind of messy, whether or not, where did these donations come from? How do we track that kind of thing? Whereas we may need, what we really need is we need to just buy some water, or we need to buy some tents for people, or we need to buy, so it varies what we may need. And so, yeah, if you're donating, you have the option to designate it to whatever area you're interested in donating to. So our website's really clear on that. You can designate, or if you can just write it on your check when you mail it in, right? Write us a note saying, I want this to go to this. People do that all the time. So it's a matter of, you can put disaster, you can put local chapter, you can put where it's needed most. And that will then, it just goes into the main bucket of wherever it is needed most. So. Right.
I see you have a card with you that has something about smoke alarm saves lives.
Yes. So we have a program called Home Fire Campaign. And this is where we will go into people's homes to help install smoke detectors so that we can help prevent any loss of life if there were to be a fire. So, because that's usually one of the most common disasters that the Red Cross responds to, is a home fire, whether multifamily or single family. And so we have this program that's completely free. It's not income based. We don't need to know any of that information. If you want smoke detectors, you need smoke detectors. Maybe you don't know how old yours are in your home. We will send some volunteers in. Sometimes we partner with the local fire departments also. So it may be firefighters coming in to talk to you a little bit about fire safety and install those detectors for you wherever they should go, and however many you need for the size of your home. And so you can call 1-844-207-4509 to make that appointment. And then you can also, there is Sound the Alarm is coming up. So Sound the Alarm is when we actually canvass neighborhoods. It's called National Sound the Alarm. It happens in April for our region. And so we will be going out into neighborhoods in Circleville, Ohio on April 20th from 9 a.m. to 2 and knocking door to door to say, hey, we're with the Red Cross. Would you like some free smoke detectors? So keep a lookout for us. Or you can go ahead and you can call that number and make an appointment if you're in that area and you're interested. We can swing by and get yours too. And we will also be in Manchester, Ohio in Adams County on the 27th from 9 to 2. So those are just a couple of extra things. We usually come out with a local fire department and just try to get as many smoke detectors in, as many houses safe as possible.
Katie, anything else you want to touch on concerning the American Red Cross before we close out?
Just one more thing back to blood drives. In our area here in Ross County and Chillicothe specifically, we actually do need blood donor ambassadors. That's a very specific volunteer role that we're trying to get local people to help serve their community. So basically that's just the person that checks people in, is that friendly face, tells people where to go at a blood drive. And we have a couple of drives that we need that for. We have the one at our actual chapter house on Bridge Street, and we have one at Adena Hospital that also needs a blood donor ambassador that we're trying to staff. So if anybody's interested in that, they can reach out to me and we can get them set up.
Katie, we certainly appreciate your taking the time to be with us today. Look forward to working with you in the future to get the word out about the Red Cross.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Again, Katie Uhl, she is the Executive Director of the South Central Ohio chapter of the American Red Cross. Our guest today on this special edition of Litter Media Live, brought to you by Hometown Motors Incorporated. I'm Mike Smith.